Kula stood upon the shattered plateau of planet Shikk, with the calm authority of a tyrant who no longer questioned outcomes. The air still crackled from his earlier assault. Steaming fissures pulsed where the ground had folded under the pressure of his nova burst, and the last surviving defenders lay unconscious, not dead. Kula kept them breathing intentionally, as resources for the Big Gite Star's data harvest protocols. He observed the destruction with detached satisfaction until a heavy ripple of ki split the sky and dropped like a thunderstorm into the heart of his newly conquered planet. Kula's eyes narrowed as the ground buckled beneath a cloaked figure whose presence radiated age, mutation, and unrefined malice. Lord Slug's boots sank slightly into the smouldering soil, and when he raised his head, the shroud parted just enough for Kula to see the ancient, armored Namekian's glowing eyes assessing him with the practiced hostility of a conqueror denied his claim. Slug's voice carried a low grind of stone as he pointed a blunt claw toward the ruined cityscape. "You are standing on my future throne world, Kula. Planet Shikk was destined to fall under the dark Namekian Empire. You interrupt more than a campaign, you interrupt my prophecy." Kula let out a quiet, entertained breath. Prophecies are for organisms without sufficient processing power to create their own destiny. Slug stepped forward, cloak dragging ash behind him. "I am no ordinary organism. This world was already bending to my influence before your mechanized shadow swallowed it. Your conquest disrupts my chain of absorption." Kula tilted his head. "Then absorb something else." Slug's ki flared in a ring of violent emerald light, heat washing outward as the ground cracked. Kula answered not with surprise but with a soft smile as he shifted into stance. Slug lunged first, and Kula met him, not with raw force but efficiency. He raised his arm and executed Glacier Execution, a technique that condensed frigid energy around his forearm and accelerated it forward in a chopping arc. Slug blocked with a mutated Namekian gauntlet that sparked on impact, the shockwave flinging sand and debris across the scorched plain. Kula adjusted instantly, firing a razor beam, thin, surgical, designed to cut blood without spilling it, slashing across Slug's shoulder and drawing a line of dark Namekian ichor. Slug snarled, but grinned through the pain. Kula watched him regenerate, fascinated. Slug wiped the blood with the back of his hand. "Your techniques are sharp, precise, but I will show you power that predates your lineage." Kula's tail coiled behind him like a blade ready to strike, and his tone flattened to cold interest. "Then stop announcing it and demonstrate." Slug obliged. The battlefield darkened as he invoked Ancient Pulse, a Namekian mutation technique that twisted the air into dense, vibrating layers. His aura surged with the energy of a dying star, and the pressure cracked open dormant volcanic vents beneath their feet. Kula braced as Slug's massive fist, empowered by mutation hardening, hammered into his chest, skidding him back and drawing a thin smear of blood from his lip. Kula wiped it away casually. "Impressive. Your biology has uses after all." Slug roared. "And I have barely begun," and the fight escalated into a blur of shadow and frost. Slug watched Kula wipe the blood from his mouth with infuriating calm, and something ancient stirred inside him. Rage, yes, but also the hungry thrill of facing an opponent he could not instantly overwhelm. To Slug, the world of Shikk was not merely territory. Its core contained a rare mineral resonance he needed to complete his next mutation cycle, a stage of evolution that would harden his body past conventional regeneration and amplify his ki through dark fractal channels embedded in his armored skin. Kula's arrival threatened centuries of preparation. Slug stepped forward, each motion heavy enough to fracture stone. "This planet is mine," he growled, and Kula's silence pressed into him like an insult. Slug extended his hand and unleashed Dark Spiral Cannon, a mutation-augmented ki attack that twisted into existence like a vortex ripping through the atmosphere. The blast hit Kula squarely, tearing up earth and metal, slamming him into a ridge with enough force to send a shockwave through the surrounding canyons. Dust rose and Slug allowed himself a smile, but it faded when Cooler walked out of the crater with only superficial burns, aura flaring in a halo of shimmering frost. Cooler spoke softly, almost amused. Your power is primitive, raw, unrefined, but undeniably substantial. Slug's grin widened. Primitive power conquers civilizations. Refined power conquers nothing but charts and measurements. The two clashed again, Slug enlarging his arm through gigant mutation, a technique that compressed mass into his forearm before he swung downward like a falling mountain. Cooler caught the blow with both hands, feet sinking inches into the ground as frost exploded outward in a radius. Blood ran down Slug's arm, not from Cooler's strike, but from the sheer force of Slug's own mutation tearing micro-fissures through his hardened tissues. Still he pressed, roaring, "I will shatter your empire before it infects the stars." Cooler's tail speared forward, wrapping around Slug's neck, tightening with mechanical precision, while Cooler whispered, "Your biology is extraordinary, but your strategy is obsolete." Slug responded by exhaling a plume of corrupted Namekian breath, a toxin-based key vapor that seared Cooler's shoulder and forced him to release. The two separated, both bleeding, both breathing heavier, the battlefield trembling beneath their power. Slug lifted his arms wide, drawing from the planet's core itself, as the air thickened and turned the color of deep volcanic amber. "This world answers to me," he declared. Cooler's aura ignited like jagged ice being shattered from the inside. "This world belongs to the one strong enough to hold it." Their energies collided, blood tearing from their skin in fine crimson and dark green streaks, as the sky churned violently above them, each knowing the fight would not end until one emperor forced the other to kneel or retreat in humiliation. The ground gave way beneath Cooler, as Slug's aura surged to a level that made the crust of planet Shikk tremble in wide, violent rings. Slug's body began to bulge unnaturally, plates of mutation-forged armor cracking apart only to re-knit into denser configurations as his power rocketed upward. Cooler watched with a scientist's fascination as the dark Namekian's bones elongated, muscles twisting into hardened cords, and his cloak tore away under the force of ancient mutation ascension, a transformation that Slug had been building toward for decades. Slug's roar rolled across the battlefield like a volcanic detonation. "This is the evolution interrupted by your arrogance," he bellowed, and his fist slammed into Cooler with enough power to draw a spray of bright crimson across the air as Cooler skidded backward, carving a trench through obsidian rock. Cooler wiped the blood from his cheek, amused despite the pain. "Your transformation increases strength exponentially," he observed, "but it is unstable." Slug lunged, and Cooler retaliated. Not alone this time. He lifted two fingers, and a cold electric tone pulsed across the horizon. Dimensional gates opened like silver wounds in the air, and dozens of metacoolers marched through with synchronized metallic precision, their eyes glowing with emotionless blue fire. Slug snarled, "You hide behind machines." Cooler's voice dropped to a whisper, "I command machines." The metacoolers scattered instantly, forming a high-speed assault grid, unleashing coordinated beam flurries that scorched Slug's armor and drew streaks of dark green blood from his limbs. But Slug adapted quickly. Mutation-enhanced tendrils burst from his back, whipping through the mechanical ranks. He crushed one metacooler's skull beneath his heel, tore another in half with a brutal backhand, then hurled its twitching torso into a cluster of three more, shattering them like metal debris. Cooler took the opportunity to strike, flashing forward with frozen serpent pierce, his tail slicing against Slug's ribs with enough force to crack armor and draw a deeper line of blood across the Namekian side. Slug howled, spinning with mutation-empowered speed, catching Cooler's arm and slamming him into the ground hard enough to ripple the planet's mantle. Cooler felt the impact through every bone but responded with a vicious upward blast of his Arctic obliteration wave, bathing Slug in an explosion of frost so cold it burned open veins in Slug's transformed skin. Slug staggered back, hunched but not falling, his breath heavy and steaming as he regenerated. "You will drown in my evolution," Slug promised. Cooler stepped forward, aura whipping like a blizzard. You will drown in your delusion. Across the quadrant, far beyond Shikk's red-tinged sky, Turles paused mid-flight, as the distant vibration of two colossal powers rippled through the cosmic currents like a distant drumbeat of war. He hovered above the Tree of Might's outer harvest fields, ki flickering around him as he tilted his head slightly, sensing the raw signatures. Cooler's icy precision, unmistakable. Slug's mutated volatility, ancient and violent. Turles narrowed his eyes. Those two? He muttered, feeling the tremor echo through his bones. That's not a fight, that's a warning. His scouter flickered briefly, unable to process the power spikes before it fizzled out in static. Turles smirked, tossing the useless device aside. Figures. When Cooler gets serious, machines always die first. He floated there for a moment, contemplating the implications. If Cooler won, the outer quadrants would shift under a colder, more methodical tyranny. If Slug won, a biological plague of dark Namekian expansion could sweep across entire sectors. Turles' empire intersected both territories. He felt the tension like a storm pushing against his borders. A faint ripple surged again, stronger this time, and Turles' pupils tightened as the shockwave hit him hard enough to ruffle his armor. That blast had Slug's signature. But that counterstrike, he exhaled sharply. Cooler's not holding back anymore. The air around him crackled, and the Tree of Might swayed under the invisible pressure of the cosmic disturbance. Turles clenched his fist as he whispered, I may have to step in soon, not to save either of them, but to make sure whoever wins remembers that Supreme Turles stands above their petty empires. He glanced toward the distant stars, a grin creeping slowly across his face. Keep fighting, you fools. Bleed each other dry. When one of you crawls out victorious, I'll be there to finish the job. Lord Slug's breathing deepened into a guttural rumble, each exhale rattling the fractured bedrock beneath him as dark green steam bled from the cracks in his transformation armor. The world around him seemed to tighten, as if planet Shikk itself sensed what was about to occur. Cooler stepped forward one measured step, the frost around his feet crackling in jagged fractals as he raised his guard again, but even he paused as Slug's aura warped harder. No longer a wild surge, but a gravitational pull of mutation energy drawn from deep within the Namekian's twisted biology. Slug flexed his fingers slowly, and the metal plates of his battle gauntlets melted off him like wax under a supernova, exposing the ridged, obsidian-green muscle beneath. You've pushed me further than any foe in centuries, Slug hissed, voice warping into a layered growl. But now you witness power older than your empire, older than your race's first breath. The sky dimmed. A pulse tore through the clouds, flattening the air into dark ripples as Slug hunched forward and slammed both hands into the earth. The planet responded instantly. Obsidian towers burst upward in spirals, as if Shikk itself was being forced to mutate alongside him. Jagged veins of black-green light crawled across Slug's body, his form expanding massively as his spine lengthened, ribcage widened, and the plates of his armor reformed into natural exoskeletal ridges, shaped like serrated blades. Ancient mutation, final ascension, Slug growled, and the instant he spoke the words, his aura erupted into a storm of dark tendrils that lashed the ground and sky alike. Cooler watched the transformation with a scientist's fascination, mingled with tactical irritation. Slug's final state radiated a key signature heavier than gravity, his power level easily doubling, perhaps tripling his prior output. Cracks spread at Cooler's feet from the pressure alone. Your biology is remarkable, Cooler admitted, shifting into a wider stance as his tail whipped behind him like a blade. A shame you rely on mutation instead of evolution. Slug's face twisted into a savage grin, fangs protruding from his lower jaw. Evolution is for the weak. I take what I need. With that, Slug blurred forward, massive, monstrous, faster than his size should allow, striking Cooler with an elbow spike that cracked his armor plating and drew a spray of bright red across the shattered battlefield. Cooler grunted, but countered with a rising knee to Slug's abdomen, the frost explosion sending shards of crystalline ki splintering across Slug's torso. Slug barely flinched, grabbing Cooler's leg and slamming him headfirst into a volcanic ridge. The collision burst magma upward in a red plume. "Break!" Slug snarled. Cooler rose from the crater with blood running down his forehead, but eyes cold and calculating. Cooler extended his right hand slowly, not in panic, but with the composure of an emperor activating a contingency he had already planned for. The air behind him tore open as a portal of white-blue light spiraled into existence, humming with the unmistakable signature of the Big Getty Star's deep core production protocols. Slug tensed as a shadow stepped forward from the portal. Humanoid, metallic, but not identical to the standard metacoolers that had previously fallen beneath his mutated strength. This one stood taller, with sleeker armor, reinforced plating layered with fractal-thin energy veins, and an eyelet that glowed not blue but white, the color of pure processing supremacy. Cooler's voice lowered to a calm whisper. Metacooler Elite Unit Prototype 0. The prototype stepped beside him silently, aura flickering with razor-sharp intensity. Slug snorted. Another toy to break. Cooler simply nodded. "Try!" Prototype 0 vanished instantly, its speed surpassing even Cooler's own, and appeared behind Slug, smashing an open palm into the dark Namkian's spine, releasing a shockwave that cratered the ground for miles. Slug roared as the force bent his body forward, but he spun with a backhand so powerful it sent the prototype flying through 3 obsidian towers before its momentum halted. The machine stabilized mid-air and returned in less than a second, with zero hesitation. "Efficient," Cooler murmured approvingly. He joined the assault, firing a cross-shaped death beam that ripped across Slug's chest, opening 3 parallel bloody lines. Slug retaliated by inhaling deeply, then exhaling a concentrated spiral of mutation vapor that corroded the air. Prototype 0 intercepted with a barrier field, but the vapor burned its left arm, smoking through metal like acid. Slug laughed, a deep, monstrous sound. "Your machine bleeds metal, and you bleed arrogance." Slug struck downward, smashing both Cooler and the prototype into the ground with a 2-fisted hammer blow that ruptured the bedrock in a radius of several miles. Lava surged upward like a fountain. Cooler shot from the molten spray and retaliated with absolute zero cannon, a frigid blast that instantly flash-froze the entire eruption, encasing lava and air into a frozen sculpture. Slug burst through the ice, cracking it apart effortlessly. He lunged with mutation blades protruding from his forearms, slicing into Cooler's shoulder and drawing a rain of crimson droplets across the field. Cooler hissed, but maintained his focus. Prototype 0, full sync mode. The metal warrior projected 3 holographic rings that locked onto Cooler's form, merging their targeting algorithms and synchronizing their key circulatory patterns. Together, they launched a unified barrage so intense the entire horizon lit like a dying star. Slug braced, screaming with fury as the combined assault tore strips of armor-like tissue from his body, scattering fragments across the battlefield. Still, he charged forward through the barrage, unstoppable, dragging his bleeding mutated body toward Cooler with pure hate-fueled will. "I will rule this world!" Slug roared. Cooler's eyes narrowed. "You will fall on it." They collided again in a thunderous eruption that shook tectonic plates. Turles flew across the quadrant with a speed only a scion raised under cosmic warfare could muster, his aura flickering in a violent mixture of deep purple and pitch black as he crossed light years in a blur of predatory intent. He had sensed the escalating confrontation on Shikk grow sharper, louder, more catastrophic. What began as 2 warlords battling had evolved into an empire-shaking collision. Turles didn't fear it. He smiled into the rushing void. "Perfect timing," he muttered, tightening his gloves as he leaned forward, accelerating even faster. The Tree of Might's energy still thrummed inside his veins, giving him a brutal, sharpened clarity. His scouter was long dead, burned out by Slug's final mutation spike, but Turles didn't need it. The sheer violence of Slug's power, mixed with Cooler's precise, frigid ki, tore a bright wound into the cosmic flow that he could follow blindfolded. Behind him, another presence slipped into pursuit, silent, controlled, masked by teleportation distortions. Tora Black emerged from hyperspace several kilometers behind Turles, maintaining a distance but tracking the same destination with unwavering focus. His expression was unreadable beneath his dark visor, but his ki was coiled and ready, controlled with the discipline of a warrior whose purpose was not to fight but to control the battlefield. "No one else interferes," Tora Black murmured as he activated a wide-range detection shield that blanketed the surrounding space, preventing any third-party fleets, opportunistic warlords, or curious Z-fighters from stumbling into the upcoming Three-Emperor collision. Turles sensed him but didn't turn. "Keeping the pests away?" he called out without slowing. "Good. I don't want interruptions." Tora Black's voice carried calmly through the void. "My orders are simple. The confrontation proceeds without outside interference. I am the wall," Turles smirked. "Then hold the line. I'll handle the throne." As he sped toward Shikk, the planet grew larger, burning, fractured, flashing with eruptions of emerald, blue, and white ki. Turles felt a fierce thrill rising inside him. Cooler, Slug, and now me. His grin widened. "Let's see who the universe bows to when the dust clears." Tora Black materialized in Shikk's upper atmosphere first, positioning himself above the battlefield like a silent overseer. His cloak snapped violently in the storm winds generated by the three titanic powers below. He watched Cooler and Slug tearing the planet apart with attacks violent enough to ignite the clouds, watched Turles streaking downward like a falling comet, and understood the weight of the moment. "Three empires converge," he whispered. "My job is to let none escape interference. No intrusions, no reinforcements, no cowards fleeing mid-battle." He raised his hand and released a pulse, an invisible wave that wrapped around Shikk's orbit like a net of shadowed ki. Within minutes, a Freezer Force recon squad attempted to warp into the system. Tora's barrier bounced them so violently back through hyperspace that their ship vanished in a crack of distorted light. On the opposite side of the system, a Slug Empire patrol detected the energy surge and tried to approach. Tora Black extended a single finger and fired a pitch-black beam that severed their engines cleanly, leaving them drifting helplessly in the void. "None interfere," he repeated. Below him, Turles broke through the atmosphere, aura blazing as he aimed straight toward the battlefield. Slug and Cooler clashed again, their strike so powerful the shockwaves bent the curvature of Shikk's sky. Tora Black tightened his fists, standing sentinel above the chaos. "The Emperors will fight," he declared, "and the universe will feel it." Turles broke through the final layer of Shikk's atmosphere, like a comet tearing open the sky, flames trailing behind his boots, as he dove toward the clashing auras of Cooler and Lord Slug. The instant his feet hit the molten ground, the entire battlefield reacted, pressure, wind, and ki snapping outward in chaotic waves. Cooler glanced up with narrowed eyes, blood running down his jawline, but expression still ice-calm. Slug's mutated silhouette twisted toward the newcomer, his massive frame steaming with the heat of regeneration. Turles cracked his knuckles slowly, savoring the tension. "I leave the quadrant alone for a few hours," he said with a low smirk, "and you two try to carve up a planet like it's a festival treat." Slug's growl vibrated the ground. "This world is mine. Cooler stole it. And you, Cyan Pest, have no claim." Turles shrugged. "I don't need a claim. I'm here because the universe shakes every time you two exhale." Cooler stepped forward, speaking in a cold monotone. "Your presence is unnecessary. This conflict was under control." Turles swept his hair back. "Funny, from up there, it looked like he was about to rip your head off." Slug slammed one massive foot into the ground, sending a geyser of obsidian shards bursting upward. "Leave this place, Cyan. My final form is not something you can survive." Turles grinned wider. "Threats only work on people who don't enjoy getting hit." With no further warning, Slug lunged at both of them, fury overpowering strategy as he swung a mutation-forged blade arm in a cleaving arc aimed to bisect Cyan and Frost Demon alike. Turles vanished just in time, appearing beside Cooler as the blade tore a canyon through the earth. "He's angry," Turles said. Cooler didn't look at him. "He's predictable." Slug roared at the insult, charging again. This time, Turles stepped into the path, planting his foot as a shockwave rippled outward. "Your fight's with me now, big guy." Slug slammed into Turles with brute force, sending the Saiyans sliding back across the battlefield, boots carving trenches in the ground as the two locked into a grapple that rattled the planet's crust. Turles' muscles bulged, straining against Slug's monstrous strength. "Damn," he hissed through gritted teeth. "You bulk up nicely." Slug howled, blasting him point blank with a burst of mutation ki that sent Turles flying into a collapsing mountain of black stone. Cooler stepped forward, charging frost around his arms. "Then I end this now." But Turles burst from the rubble with a laugh, aura exploding outward. "Not without me, you don't." Cooler released a razor-thin death beam aimed straight for Slug's throat, but Turles intercepted Slug with a spinning heel kick that redirected the Namekian's torso mid-motion, causing the beam to slice across Slug's shoulder instead. Slug bellowed in fury as dark green blood streamed down his mutated frame, steaming against the heated ground. He retaliated by exploding outward with a dome of mutation ki, slamming both warriors back. Turles flipped mid-air and landed on his feet, skidding through the dust, while Cooler's armored boots carved a perfect symmetrical slide across the debris. "You interfere with efficiency," Cooler said sharply. Turles threw him a sideways grin. "You're welcome." Slug stomped forward, his mutated aura thickening into a black-green storm. "Enough! I will kill you both!" He slammed his fists together, creating a shockwave that peeled layers of earth from the battlefield. Turles was the first to counter, rushing into Slug with a mid-air strike that cracked the Namkian's exoskeletal armor, blood spray flicking across the air. Cooler seized the opening, teleporting behind Slug and driving a frost-coated elbow spike into Slug's spine, releasing a burst of cold powerful enough to frost over half the mountain range behind him. Slug screamed and spun wildly, sweeping his massive arm outward and knocking both warriors off their footing. Turles flipped again, landing next to Cooler this time. "You know," he said, "if we stopped hitting each other and started hitting him, this would go faster." Cooler didn't answer directly. "Your presence is statistically inefficient." Turles smirked. "That's a yes." Slug inhaled deeply, chest expanding unnaturally. "Die! Planet-splitting mutation breath!" The beam shot forward, a corrosive spiral of mutation vapor and condensed ki capable of dissolving anything in its path. Cooler and Turles reacted at the same time. Turles slammed his palms into the ground and launched upward with a burst of force, meeting the beam head-on with a ki shield that flickered violently. Cooler zipped beside him, adding a freezing barrier of compressed frost energy. The combined defense barely held as the breath attack shredded layers of their shielding, tearing blood from Turles' forearms and cracking Cooler's chest plate. "Push!" Turles shouted. Cooler added a second reinforcing arm. The beam fractured, rerouted upward, and shot out into the atmosphere. For a moment, the two warriors remained side by side, breathing hard. Turles laughed through the pain. "I like this teamwork thing." Cooler stepped away. "Don't get used to it." Far above, Tora Black sensed the mutation breath tearing into the upper atmosphere and immediately expanded his orbital barrier, reinforcing the shield that prevented outside contact. His visor displayed multiple incoming signals, Freezer Force scouts attempting to scan the battle, Slug Empire remnants trying to warp in through back channels, even stray pirate fleets attempting to slip into the chaos undetected. "No interference," Tora vowed, spreading his arms. His ki expanded into a black dome that filled Shikk's orbit, tightening like a net. A Freezer Force command cruiser attempted to brute force its way through the shield. Tora Black flicked two fingers and teleported in front of it, hovering silently in the void. The ship fired. Tora Black sidestepped, placed his hand on the hull, and unleashed a pulse of void energy that disabled every system instantly, sending the cruiser drifting lifelessly into space. A Slug Empire spearhead warped into range. Tora fired a black beam that sliced their engine core, sending them spinning back into hyperspace. Behind him, a group of independent raiders attempted to break through undetected. Tora deactivated his visor, letting his eyes glow with pure dark ki. He unleashed a radial shockwave that erased their weapons and propulsion simultaneously. The entire orbit around Shikk became a silent graveyard of powerless ships drifting in formation, none daring to move. Tora Black crossed his arms and returned his gaze downward to the battlefield. "Their war belongs to them," he said. "I allow no cowards, no spectators, no armies, only the emperors." The planet shook again as another shockwave erupted. Tora's eyes narrowed behind his visor. The decisive phase begins. Slug roared in fury, mutation blades protruding from his forearms, shoulders and spine like the spiked armor of a living war machine. He charged at Turles first, recognizing the cyan as the most disruptive variable. Turles caught the first strike, but the second blade tore across his shoulder, sending a splash of red across the battlefield. Turles retaliated with a vicious uppercut that cracked Slug's jaw, then ducked under another swipe and blasted him in the ribs with a point-blank ki burst that ripped open a chunk of mutated flesh. Slug howled and countered by smashing both fists into Turles' back, slamming him into the ground with crater-creating force. Cooler seized the opening and fired a frost beam that speared into Slug's side, freezing half his torso. Slug shattered the ice instantly, his regeneration swirling through the wound. "Enough games," he bellowed. "I will rule this planet, and your graves will feed my empire." Cooler stepped beside Turles again. "His regeneration rate is accelerating." Turles wiped the blood from his mouth. "So hit him harder." Slug charged them both, and the two finally moved in perfect synchronization. Cooler ducking under Slug's first blow, Turles leaping overhead with a downward double kick that snapped Slug's neck sideways. Cooler followed up with a spinning frost blade strike, cutting deep into Slug's abdomen. Slug retaliated with a backhand that knocked Cooler into a cliff face, then swatted Turles from the sky with an elbow spike. All three landed on different sides of the battlefield, panting, bleeding, refusing to fall. Slug straightened, towering above them, aura swirling like a dark supernova. "Kneel before your emperor," he snarled. Turles cracked his neck. Cooler wiped blood from his lip. Both spoke at once. "No." Slug's entire body convulsed in a violent, unnatural rhythm as his ki began to swell past anything that mutation biology should have been able to sustain. His aura thickened until it resembled a living nebula, black and green twisting around him so densely that chunks of planetary stone peeled upward into the sky. Cooler's visor readouts scrambled before flickering dead, and Turles felt the heat ripple across the battlefield like the breath of a dying star. Slug's voice deepened into an echoing multi-layered growl as his skeletal plate split again, revealing pulsating magma-colored veins underneath. "I am ascending beyond ascension," he roared, the pitch vibrating every bone in their bodies. Cooler narrowed his eyes. His mutation cycle shouldn't be possible at this range. Turles spat blood, laughing. "Nothing about him is supposed to be possible." Slug slammed his hands into the ground, and a continent-sized shockwave blasted outward, tearing mountains free and sending molten rivers across the fractured terrain. Cooler and Turles leapt skyward, but Slug met them instantly, appearing behind Cooler with a strike that snapped a rib and launched him through the atmosphere. Turles caught Slug's ankle, twisting and slamming the Namekian back to the ground, but Slug bounced back up instantly, regeneration now so rapid it looked like time reversal. "Your struggle feeds my evolution." Slug howled, grabbing Turles by the skull and smashing him into the ground so hard the crust split for miles. Cooler re-entered the battlefield in a streak of frost, catching Slug across the face with a frost-enchanted palm strike that shaved off half a cheek. Slug grew it back in a heartbeat and hurled Cooler into Turles with force that caved the earth beneath both warriors. The two rose slowly, battered but not broken. Turles exhaled painfully. I'll be honest, he's becoming a problem. Cooler straightened his posture. Then remove him. Turles smirked. Together? Cooler didn't smile. Efficiency demands it. For the first time, Cooler and Turles moved without conflict, without hesitation, and without ego. Purely as two apex predators understanding that another had stepped into their territory. Their auras ignited simultaneously, Cooler's frost spiraling around Turles' wildfire key in a violent fusion of temperature and power. Slug rushed at them with animalistic fury, mutation tendrils lashing in every direction. Turles met him first, shoulder slamming into his chest and driving both fists deep into Slug's ribcage, causing a spray of dark Namekian blood to splash the battlefield. Cooler flashed behind Slug and unleashed absolute zero execution, his coldest technique, freezing Slug's entire spine in a single instant. The moment Slug staggered, Turles spun into a rising knee strike that cracked the ice and shattered Slug's spine into fragments. Fragments that Slug immediately began regenerating, though slower this time. He can be hurt, Turles said through labored breath. Cooler nodded. Then we continue. They converged on Slug with blinding velocity, Cooler firing precision beams that sliced chunks of armor-like tissue away, while Turles battered Slug with heavy, punishing close-range strikes. Slug roared in frustration as Turles kicked him upward, and Cooler seized the opportunity, launching a frost spear that impaled Slug through the abdomen and pinned him against a floating slab of shattered bedrock. Turles landed beside Cooler, both panting, both bleeding. He's not healing as fast, Turles muttered. Cooler nodded. We have found his threshold. But Slug's aura spiked again, violently, grotesquely, as he tore himself free, mutation veins twisting like serpents. You cannot end me, he screamed, and the planet answered him. Shikk's crust cracked open, magma surging upward as the gravitational field destabilized. Turles steadied himself as the battlefield tilted. Great, the planet's dying. Cooler remained stoic. Then finish him before it collapses. High above the planet, Tora Black stood in the upper atmosphere as the entire world groaned beneath him. His barrier continued to hold, dozens of disabled fleets trapped in orbit, powerless to re-enter the battlefield. But then two signatures tore through space like lightning bolts. One controlled and crackling, the other wild and sharp. Gokhan and Tarina descended from hyperspace in comet-like streaks, the raw force of their entry shattering Tora's outer perimeter. Tora's eyes widened behind his visor. They breached the first layer. Gokhan appeared first, landing on a floating slab of stone with casual confidence, cloak shifting behind him. Tarina hovered slightly above him, aura flickering with pink and violet distortions. Gokhan smirked. Looks like we're late to the party. Tarina eyed the battlefield. 3 emperors in one place. That planet's about to stop existing. Tora Black materialized between them and the surface, raising one hand. Turn back. This confrontation is not yours to enter. Gokhan shrugged. If Turles is fighting something this big, I might want to see it. Tarina cracked her knuckles. And maybe hit it. Tora's voice hardened. No. With a swing of his arm, he released a dark shockwave, not meant to kill, but to shove them back through the barrier. Gokhan blocked it with a single palm, feet sliding across air. You're strong, Gokhan admitted. Tarina flicked her wrist, warping ki around her fingers. But you're not stopping us if we really want through. Tora Black's aura erupted. Then I escalate. He unleashed void field suppression, a technique that compressed space around them so tightly that even Gokhan's movements slowed. Tarina strained, pushing against the field with a growl. Damn, he's heavy. Gokhan grinned. Guess that means we go all out. Before they could, the planet cracked violently below, a shockwave so massive that even Tora Black braced. For a split second, he hesitated and made his decision. The planet won't survive 3, let alone 5. and for the first time he stepped aside willingly. Go, but understand, once you enter, I will not save you. Gokun descended like a meteor, punching through falling debris, landing with a shockwave that drew both Cooler and Turles' eyes. Tarina appeared beside him in a flash of ki distortion, her boots cracking the stone beneath her feet. Slug roared at their arrival, aura spiraling into chaotic arcs. Turles wiped blood from his chin. You two picked a bad day. Gokun smirked. Or a perfect one. Cooler narrowed his eyes. Stay out of the way, or be eliminated. Tarina winked at him. Try it. Slug lunged at all four fighters with insane fury as the planet beneath them began breaking apart entirely. The three-way Emperor clash had now become a five-way cosmic catastrophe, but alliances, priorities, and survival would not remain stable for long. Planet Shikk cracked beneath their feet as Lord Slug, driven mad by his mutation overdrive, released another pulse of wild ki that sent molten geysers erupting skyward. Turles and Cooler braced themselves, both battered beyond their usual composure, while Gokun stepped forward with a rare seriousness tightening his expression. If this planet goes, he said quietly, so does every innocent civilian trapped under the surface bunkers. And I'm not letting that stain fall on my watch. Slug swung at him with a mutation blade the size of a small starship wing, but Gokun caught the blow with one shimmering hand, his aura flashing in a gold-white burst that cracked the entire battlefield. The shockwave tore open a canyon behind them and sent Tarina flipping backward through mid-air, swearing as she stabilized herself. Cooler raised an eyebrow. He caught that bare-handed? Turles grimaced. He's stronger than he looks, and he loves showing off when an audience is big enough. Slug pushed forward, veins bulging, screaming as he poured the last of his catastrophic mutation power into overpowering Gokun. But Gokun didn't move. He pushed back, slowly, crushing the blade arm inward until bone and armored plates snapped under his fingers. Slug howled, blasting him point blank with mutation breath, but Gokun surged through it with a punch so explosive it shook the tectonic plates. Tarina landed beside him, firing a warp Kamehameha into Slug's lower body to keep him staggered. Finish it, Gokun, she shouted. Gokun nodded and activated a technique no one expected. Heavenly Restraint Seal. Golden rings materialized around Slug's limbs, shrinking violently and freezing his movement as if time itself refused to let him continue. Slug roared in animal panic as the rings constricted, each one burning with divine ki channeled through Gokun's bloodline techniques. His mutation armor writhed, cracking in several places as the restraints tightened around bone and muscle. Turles blinked, stunned. I've never seen him use that. Cooler analyzed the rings, eyes narrowing. Not a suppression field, not paralysis. He stepped closer, a containment construct. Gokun planted his feet and pressed both palms outward, thus forming a glowing triangle sigil around Slug's torso. The ground beneath them buckled, darkening under the pressure. Hold still, you overgrown pickle, Gokun grunted as Slug tried to explode his ki outward, only for the seal to compress it like a vacuum crushing a star. Slug dropped to his knees, still roaring but unable to regain control of his limbs. Tarina exhaled with relief. Nice. We're taking him alive? Gokun nodded. Planetary PR looks a lot better when the threat is captured, not vaporized. Turles huffed. You would think about popularity during a war. Cooler crossed his arms. Such theatrics, yet effective. As Slug collapsed fully into the sigil's center, Gokun pressed his hands together and forced the seal to shrink until Slug's massive final form was reduced into a tightly compressed containment sphere of swirling golden ki. He'll be sent to the planetary prison network, Gokun said. Maximum security, no risk of breakout. Cooler stepped forward sharply. He is my spoils of conquest. Gokun didn't step back. He nearly destroyed the entire quadrant. I'm not letting him vanish into your torture chambers just to reappear angrier later. Turles shot Gokun a sideways look. We'll discuss ownership later. Tarina lifted the sphere with one hand. Feels like a Namekian stress ball. The planet groaned again, loudly this time. The crust split deeper, magma spilling across valleys in massive waves. The air warped, sky dimming under the weight of tectonic collapse. Turles cursed. We're running out of time. One more shift and the planet folds in on itself. Cooler raised his hand, forming a frost dome over a widening fissure. Structural stabilization is possible if we counteract the core pressure. Gokhan floated upward, scanning Shikk's energy flow. The core's overloaded from Slug's mutation siphon. We need a 3-point channel redirect. Turles sighed. I hate teamwork. But he lifted his hands anyway, charging a concentrated force sphere. Cooler hovered opposite him, gathering frost energy capable of freezing molten currents. Gokhan took the center point above them, forming a divine key conduit. The three unleashed their energy simultaneously, streams of blast force, frost containment, and planetary key equilibrium linking into a single triangular stabilizing shock that surged downward into the L-core. The planet shuddered, not violently this time, but as if taking a long breath after nearly dying. Lava flows slowed, fissures sealed under frost and force. The shaking gradually stopped. After a final deep rumble, silence fell over Shikk. Tarina landed on a rock and wiped her forehead. I can't believe we saved this place. Gokhan smiled wide. We did. Cooler corrected him instantly. I did. This is my conquered world. Gokhan shot him a pointed glare. Well, I saved your conquered world. And your troops. And you. Turles stepped between them, tired of the brewing argument. Planet's intact. Slug is captured. The Quadrant sees this as a joint victory. Gokhan stretched a grin. A big win for the Z-Fighter PR. Turles muttered, Stars help me. Cooler's tail twitched. No, this world remains under my rule. Your interference is an overstep. Gokhan's smile didn't fade. Maybe, but your planet would be dust without me. Maybe that's something the High Council would love to weigh in on. Turles stiffened slightly at the words, not from fear, but from the political game suddenly unfolding beneath the battlefield dust. Council arbitration? He said quietly, hands on his hips. A planetary dispute hearing between emperors and Earth's defenders? That's going to get loud fast. Cooler tilted his head. This planet is mine. That is not negotiable. Gokhan shrugged casually. Maybe not, but public perception says I saved the planet, and Earth has influence in council decisions. Tarina raised a hand. I saved it too. Turles pinched the bridge of his nose. Yes, Tarina, we know. Cooler stepped closer to Gokhan, frost aura subtly rising. Are you attempting to use bureaucracy to counter my conquest? Gokhan answered with a calm, confident grin. I'm saying the Council decides planetary sovereignty when multiple factions participate in its defense, and I don't think they'll hand you this world unchallenged. Turles stared at the distant horizon, the last tremors of the planet fading beneath them. This will become a political war now, he muttered. My empire holds influence in outer sectors. Gokhan holds Earth. Cooler holds territory here. This could become interesting. Tora Black descended quietly from the sky, arms crossed. Whatever happens next, he said, Slug is secured, the planet stands, and no outside empires interfered. He glanced at the three powerhouses before him. But the Council will not like this outcome. 3 rulers saving a planet together? They'll want answers. Gokhan cracked his neck. Then we give them answers. Cooler frowned. Turles smirked. Tarina rolled her eyes. Shikk lived, but the galaxy would feel the consequences. The High Council chamber shimmered with divine radiance as Gokhan, Cooler, and Turles stepped onto the obsidian floor, each one flanked by holographic projections of planet Shikk's near destruction. At the head of the chamber sat Hellas, the goddess of beauty and one of the highest arbiters in cosmic jurisdiction. Draped in gold and celestial fabrics that danced with ambient starlight, she regarded the 3 powerhouses with a mixture of curiosity and irritation. The Council has reviewed preliminary footage of the Shikk incident, she began, voice smooth yet edged with authority. But I wish to hear directly from the involved parties before issuing judgment. Her gaze moved first to Cooler. You claim the planet by conquest, yet the recorded data shows significant interference from both Gokhan and Turles. Explain. Cooler stepped forward. Planet Shikk was already subdued when Slug interfered, and I engaged him as part of my right to defend newly conquered territory. Gokhan and Turles appeared without invitation and disrupted my stabilization efforts. Gokhan's eyebrow twitched. Stabilization? Slug was about to crack the planet like an egg, and you were 2 minutes away from being crushed under him. Cooler didn't turn his head. 2 minutes is an eternity to someone of my caliber. Turles folded his arms, amused. He means he was losing. Cooler shot him a sideways glance. Hellas raised one hand. Enough. This is not a battlefield. It is a court. Continue. Gokhan inhaled sharply. Slug wasn't just attacking a world. He struck me directly, an authorized protector of Earth and the Z-fighters. He initiated conflict with a recognized authority. Hellas leaned back in her throne. Interesting, but planetary jurisdiction in that region belongs to Turles, not Earth. Why involve yourself, Gokhan? Gokhan squared his shoulders. Because if I didn't, the planet would have died. Hellas nodded slowly, then shifted her attention to Turles, eyes narrowing with subtle amusement. Lord Turles, as ruler of the quadrant in which the conflict occurred, what is your perspective? Turles smirked slightly, enjoying the sudden spotlight. Slug was out of control, mutating beyond reason. I sensed his power spike from sectors away. Whether the planet belonged to Cooler or to no one, Slug posed a universal threat. And whether I like it or not, Gokhan stepping in stopped the planet from ripping apart. Cooler scoffed. I had matters under control. Turles ignored him. Slug needed to be stopped, contained, and evaluated. Frankly, 5 years imprisonment seems appropriate. The man nearly ended a world. Hellas arched a brow. 5 years? She tapped her staff lightly on the ground, a cascade of shimmering light rippling outward. You speak the language of punishment easily. Perhaps too easily, Lord Turles. Turles kept his smirk. Slug nearly took my quadrant down with him. I'd say 5 is lenient. Gokhan added, he's a danger, and he attacked recognized authority figures. That alone demands consequence. Cooler exhaled sharply, frost forming on the floor around him. Slug interfered with my conquest. If imprisonment is the chosen response, then he should be sentenced for obstruction of imperial expansion. Hellas tilted her head. All 3 of you wish to punish him, for different reasons. She rested her cheek on her knuckles thoughtfully. Very well. Continue your arguments for why he must remain imprisoned, instead of being allowed the right of conquest, traditionally afforded to planetary challenge. Cooler moved first. Slug exceeded the boundaries of conquest. He attempted to mutate the core of Shikk to fuel his transformation. That is not conquest. It is planetary assassination. A conqueror must preserve the territory he seeks to rule. Tarina, seated in the delegation row behind Gokhan, whispered, He's not wrong. Gokhan took a step forward. Slug lost all claim to conquest the moment he attacked me. Earth's influence is wide, and the Z-fighters are recognized peacekeeping forces across multiple sectors. He struck first. That alone voids his rights. Hellas shifted her gaze toward Turles. And you, Turles? Turles shrugged. Slug wasn't conquering. He was destroying. There's a difference. He paused. And if the footage is accurate, and I believe it is, Shikk would have died if Gokhan didn't restrain him. Whether that fits your council rules or not, I'm not interested in debating definitions while galaxies crumble. Hellas tapped her staff again, projecting a slowed-down reconstruction of Gokhan restraining Slug moments before the planet destabilized. She studied the footage with a sharp, calculating eye. This moment, she said quietly, is the fulcrum of the entire case. The footage zoomed, Slug's key spiking so violently the crust of the world bent upward, just seconds before Gokhan's heavenly restraint seal collapsed the mutation. Healers exhaled. If the Scion had not intervened, the planet may have been lost. Cooler stiffened. Speculation. Turles cut him off. Reality. I saw it with my own eyes. Hellas nodded. Then Slug's claim to conquest is denied. He is sentenced to 2 years, not 5. Gokhan blinked. 2. Turles smirked but said nothing. Cooler simply waited for the rest. Hellas continued. After that, he will undergo planetary rehabilitation under the oversight of the Council. His mutation will be screened for catastrophic instability. Only then will further decisions be made. A hush fell over the chamber as Hellas turned her full attention to the planet itself. Now, Shikk. She reviewed the footage again. Cooler's initial invasion, Slug's interference, Goken and Turles' intervention, and finally the stabilization of the planetary core. Her voice softened slightly, though her authority never wavered. This world was seconds away from destruction, and although I cannot say with absolute certainty that only Gokan saved it. She paused. I can say that without his intervention, survival odds dropped catastrophically. Cooler folded his arms. Irrelevant. Conquest was mine by right. Gokan countered instantly. And the world exists because of me. Turles sighed. Here we go. Hellas raised her hand, and the room fell silent. By council law, planetary ownership defaults to the conqueror, unless the planet was saved by another authority in a manner that supersedes the conqueror's claim. The room leaned forward. In this case, Hellas said, the data is inconclusive. Therefore, Cooler's eyes narrowed. Gokan inhaled. Turles smirked. Hellas' final verdict rang through the chamber like a divine bell. Planet Shikk remains under Cooler's rule by conquest. Cooler allowed himself a faint, victorious smile. Hellas continued. However, Gokan, your intervention is formally acknowledged. You are credited for planetary preservation. Gokan nodded once, accepting. Hellas turned to Turles. And you, Lord Turles? Your assistance prevented the collapse of an entire quadrant. You receive formal gratitude from this council. Turles shrugged. Thank you. That's it. Hellas smiled thinly. That is it. The chamber lights dimmed. The hearing ended. The High Council chamber emptied slowly, echoes of divine energy fading as attendants drifted away, and lower delegates teleported back to their respective worlds. But Cooler remained exactly where he stood, the frost around his feet tightening with every passing second, as he watched Gokan speak briefly with Tarina before turning to leave. The doors had barely begun to close when Cooler stepped forward, his aura cold enough to make the metallic floor ripple with white condensation. Gokan, he said, the single word slicing through the chamber like a blade. Gokan paused, glancing back over his shoulder with a relaxed grin that only irritated Cooler further. Yeah? Need directions back to Shikk? Cooler appeared beside him in an instant, his face inches from Gokan's, voice low and lethal. You embarrassed me today, before the council, before the gods. Gokan held his stare unflinchingly. I saved your planet, you're welcome. Cooler's tail snapped behind him, a clear warning. Do not mistake their ruling as permission to interfere with my empire. The only reason you stand here breathing is because destroying you would make me appear petty in front of Hellas. Gokan chuckled lightly. You know what the funny part is? I wasn't even trying to one-up you. I was trying to stop Slug from cracking your new toy world in half. Cooler leaned in closer. Do not take credit for my survival. Gokan shrugged. Fine, then take credit for not dying. The line was so casual, so dismissive, that Cooler's eyes flashed with killing instinct, but just as quickly he suppressed the impulse, knowing the political cost. Cooler stepped back, voice icy. You will stay out of my quadrant unless summoned. Gokan pointed at the floor. Council says I can intervene in emergencies. And saving planets? That's kind of my thing. Cooler's nostrils flared. Cross my borders again without cause, and we will finish what began on Shikk. Gokan answered with an easy smile that somehow felt like a threat. Anytime, cousin. Cooler's eyes narrowed. How dare he use the word cousin so casually, and he turned away with a swirl of frost, leaving the chamber cold enough to sting. While Gokan and Tarina departed in a flicker of light, Turles lingered near one of the chamber balconies, arms crossed as he watched the divine architecture shift overhead. The Z-fighters were gone. Cooler was gone. But Hellas remained seated in her throne, reviewing holographic data with a quiet, analytical poise. Turles approached her, footsteps echoing against crystalline marble. You wanted to see me alone? He asked. Hellas did not look up immediately. She finished her thought, flicking one hologram aside before speaking. I did, because your role in this confrontation is unique. Turles smirked. Unique usually means useful. She finally lifted her gaze to him, her emerald eyes shimmering with both beauty and razor-sharp political intuition. You operate in territories where Earth holds influence, where Kula holds influence, where I hold influence, yet you refuse formal alignment with any of the major cosmic empires. Turles shrugged with casual arrogance. I don't like people telling me what to do. Hellas smiled faintly. And yet you interfered on Shikk without hesitation. Turles leaned against one of the balcony columns. Slug threatened my sector, and I wasn't going to let Kula or Gokhan be the only ones shaping how the galaxy sees us. Hellas nodded. Precisely. You three are creating waves, political fractures, shifting power maps. Her tone hardened just slightly. You understand that if Kula and Gokhan continue clashing publicly, the council will be forced to step in. Turles sighed. And that means I'll be dragged into it. Hellas tilted her head. You already are, Lord Turles. You helped save Shikk. You stabilized the core. You influenced the ruling. Turles chuckled. And all I got was a thank you. Hellas smiled wider. Sometimes a thank you is the first step toward control. Turles raised an eyebrow. Is that advice? Hellas leaned back in her throne, watching him with an unreadable expression. It is a warning. Turles stepped closer, curiosity sharpening his tone. What exactly am I being warned about? Kula? Gokhan? Slug's supporters? Hellas shook her head. No, those are obvious dangers. You are far too clever to be undone by obvious threats. She lowered her voice. The danger for you is the void that forms between empires when they collide. Someone will fill that void. Turles straightened. And you think that someone is me? Hellas didn't blink. You are already acting like it. She waved her hand, projecting a sector map. Turles's territory, once modest, now glowed across half a quadrant. You command a growing empire, you have the loyalty of powerful fighters, you have the tree of might, you have history, legacy, and... Her eyes sharpened. You have charisma. Turles clicked his tongue. I prefer fear. Hellas's smile returned. Fear and charisma are siblings, but here is the truth. Kula thinks he controls the outer territories. Gokhan thinks the council will protect him. But you... She leaned forward. You are building something neither of them sees coming. And the more they clash, the easier they make it for you to rise between them. Turles paused, not out of confusion, but because he felt the accuracy of her words settle into place like puzzle pieces. So you're saying I could take advantage of both sides? Hellas nodded. If you choose to. But you must tread carefully, Lord Turles. You walk between gods, tyrants, and heroes. And if you step incorrectly... Turles finished the sentence himself. They'll crush me. Hellas kept her gaze steady. Or unite against you. Turles pushed off the column and exhaled slowly. Good to know. Hellas closed the hologram map and rose from her throne, her divine presence illuminating the chamber. One more thing, she said softly. Turles turned, waiting. Do not underestimate Kula. He hides his fear behind frost. Nor underestimate Gokhan. He hides his ambition behind heroism. Turles smirked. And what do I hide behind? Hellas regarded him for a long moment. Your smile, she answered. That is where your deception lives. Turles grinned, already walking toward the exit. Then you understand me better than most. Hellas watched him leave, her final words echoing behind him. The galaxy is changing, Turles, and whether you realize it or not, you stand at the center of it. Turles didn't turn around. He didn't need to. The smirk on his face said everything. The political war had begun, and he was already playing both sides better than they knew. Gokhan and Tarina walked side by side through the glowing white corridors of the High Council's outer ring, their reflections stretching across polished marble as a dozen celestial lights shifted overhead. The air here always felt heavy, not from gravity, but from the weight of decisions made in these halls. decisions that shaped worlds, empires, and destinies. Tarina flicked her hair back with a sharp huff. 2 years, she muttered. Slug nearly tore Shikk in half, mutated it into a bioreactor, obliterated 3 armies, and assaulted council-recognized authority. You, I might add. And he gets 2 years? Goken slid his hands behind his head, stretching as he walked. Hellas said the footage couldn't prove the planet would have died without me, and Slug technically wasn't violating conquest law until he started mutating the core. Council law loves technicalities. Tarina rolled her eyes. Technicalities almost killed that world, and the council swears they want to protect life. Goken chuckled. They protect politics. The life part comes second. Tarina stopped him with a hand on his shoulder. Doesn't it bother you? Goken thought about it for a moment, his expression softening. Yeah, it does. Slug deserved more time, but once the council gets involved, it becomes diplomacy, not justice. Tarina crossed her arms. Diplomacy is just fancy talk for don't upset the big scary empires. Goken pointed at her. And Slug was a big scary empire. Hellas probably figured 2 years in maximum containment is enough to humble him without creating a power vacuum. Tarina's expression tightened. But when he gets out, you think he's going to send you a thank you card? Goken let out a laugh. If he does, I'm framing it. Tarina walked ahead a few steps, letting her boots echo through the halls before speaking again. Let's talk about what happens next. Slug's empire wasn't small. Someone's going to try taking his territory. Goken nodded slowly. Yeah, and that's where the council laws get messy. Kula claims Shikk by conquest. Turles claims the quadrant by sovereignty. Earth claims authority when Z-fighters are attacked. And the council just tries to keep everyone from killing each other. Tarina frowned. Feels like they're losing control. Goken lowered his voice. They are. Hellas saw it. I saw it. Turles definitely saw it. Tarina gave him a look. You think Turles will move on Slug's territory? Goken shrugged. Maybe. Turles is smart. He won't start a war unless he thinks he can win, but he will take advantage of any opportunity. Tarina leaned against the wall, staring at the distant star map holograms floating in the center of the chamber. And Kula? He's going to expand now that he has a fresh victory. The council validated his conquest. That's all the proof he needs that he can push boundaries. Goken sighed. Kula's going to test limits until someone stops him. Tarina raised a brow. And who's that someone? You? Goken didn't answer. He looked up at the star map instead, the tiny worlds glowing like gems against the void. If Kula puts innocent lives at risk, yeah, then it's me. Tarina smirked. Hero mode activated. Goken nudged her with an elbow. You say that like it's a bad thing. Tarina shrugged. It's annoying, but it's also why people look up to you. Goken pushed off the wall and began walking again, his expression shifting into something more thoughtful. Slug's imprisonment gives the galaxy 2 years of breathing room, but when he gets out, he'll be more dangerous. Angry. Focused. Tarina cracked her knuckles. Good. I owe him for nearly taking my head off. Goken laughed. He did almost slice you in half. Tarina narrowed her eyes. And you didn't see me complaining, did you? No, Goken admitted, but I saw you chasing him across a volcanic ridge, screaming death threats. Tarina smirked. And it was impressive, Goken said with a grin. Tarina punched his arm lightly. Damn right. They turned a corner into the council garden walkway, lush plant life suspended in floating gravity orbs, waterfalls running upward instead of down. Goken slowed, staring into the swirling reflection of a starlit pond. Tarina, what do you think the council really wants? She tilted her head. From who, Slug? No, Goken said, eyes narrowing. From us. The Z-fighters. Tarina leaned beside him, eyes scanning the mirrored surface. They want stability and strength, and a group that can intervene without starting a galactic war. Goken nodded slowly. Exactly. So if the galaxy keeps destabilizing, the council might start leaning on us more. Tarina nudged him. Is that a problem? Goken lifted his gaze. Only if it drags Earth into fights we didn't start. Tarina pushed away from the pond and started walking again, her steps quieter now, more deliberate. So what's the move, Gokhan? You gonna file appeals, push for stricter laws, demand more authority? Gokhan rubbed the back of his neck. I don't know, maybe not. Tarina arched a brow. That's a first. You usually know exactly what you're doing. Gokhan gave her a sideways grin. I know what I'm doing when it comes to punching things. Politics? He exhaled with a groan. Politics suck. Tarina burst out laughing. Yeah, they really do. She adopted a more serious tone. But Gokhan, we're not just fighters anymore. The council sees us. Turles sees us. Cooler definitely sees us. And Slug, he's gonna remember every second of that restraint seal you slapped on him. Gokhan nodded. I know. Tarina stopped in front of him, locking eyes with a seriousness few others ever saw in her. Then we get ready, because in 2 years, Slug walks free. And the galaxy will test every law the council just used today. Gokhan's expression shifted, determined, confident, unshakable. Then we'll be ready when it happens. Tarina smirked. You better be, because when Slug shows up again... She cracked her knuckles. I'm punching him first. Gokhan laughed, slinging an arm around her shoulder as they walked toward the teleportation dice. Deal. The Planetary Prison Network, PPN, was not a single location, but a constellation of fortified detention worlds suspended across multiple star systems, linked by wormhole chains and guarded by gods, machines, and laws older than most civilizations. When Slug arrived, bound inside the heavenly restraint sphere Gokhan had sealed around him, the prison moon known as Axiom 9 came into view, a barren metallic orb covered in hexagonal armor plates, rotating silently above a dying star. 4 colossal pylons beamed containment energy into the moon's core, keeping prisoners separated from their own key. As Slug's sphere descended into the facility, guards equipped with divine tier dampeners flanked the path, armored beings with expressionless eyes and key signatures colder than the void. The warden, an obsidian-skinned titan named Warden Chiron, waited at the platform with arms folded, watching the sphere crackle with golden seal energy. Lord Slug, he said, voice booming through the chamber, you are hereby entered into the Planetary Prison Network for a sentence of 2 years by order of the High Council. The sphere touched the ground. Slug's muffled growl vibrated against the light. Chiron's eyes narrowed. You should consider yourself fortunate. The council debated 5. At that, the golden sphere shattered like glass, and Slug fell out onto the floor, shackled by divine iron cuffs that bit into his mutated wrists. Slug inhaled, cracked his neck, and glared upward with burning hatred. 2 years, he snarled. For a conqueror? For a ruler? His voice deepened. For a god? Chiron didn't flinch. For a criminal who nearly destroyed a world. Slug spit dark blood on the floor. I will devour this prison. Slug was dragged down a long corridor lined with containment chambers, each one carved into an isolated gravitational pocket that kept inmates from sensing each other's ki. Every step he took triggered the restraints to glow, suppressing his mutation energy with brutal efficiency. He tested them anyway, flexing, pulling, trying to let his muscles swell into transformation, but the divine iron burned into his skin each time, releasing a countershock that forced him to his knees. Slug screamed, tendons tightening, veins swelling in protest. Chiron watched with a faint, unimpressed smirk. This is Axiom 9, he said. You cannot mutate your way out of this. Every cell adapts to your biology, every barrier adjusts to your energy, every lock is older than your empire. Slug rose slowly, eyes venomous. I have broken locks older than suns. Chiron leaned in, voice dropping. Not these. 2 guards shoved Slug forward, but he straightened and walked under his own power, refusing to show weakness. He peered into other cells, dim figures meditating, screaming, sparring with holographic restraints. Slug snarled at them. Bow to your king. The prisoners barely reacted. One old warrior lifted his head and smirked. We have no kings here. Slug hissed. You will. But the guards electro-forced him onward. At the final chamber, a sphere of rotating silver rings, Chiron input the seal code. The rings expanded, forming a cage large enough for Slug's fully mutated form, not as mercy but as a reminder. The prison anticipated his power. 2 years, Chiron said as the rings ignited with anti-mutation light. Reflect on failure. Slug snapped his jaws. I do not fail. As the rings closed around him, Slug's mutation energy flickered violently, trying one last desperate surge to escape. The chamber's containment field responded instantly. Beams of pure restraint energy hammered him from every direction, slamming him against the floor. Slug roared, body contorting, mutation veins pulsing like molten wiring under his skin. You cannot keep me, he bellowed, forcing himself upright against the field, blood dripping from his palms. His aura burst out in jagged pulses, dark green flames threatening to swallow the chamber, but each pulse met a counterforce, compressing into nothingness. The containment rings rotated faster, their harmonic frequency disrupting Slug's ki at the molecular level. Chiron watched calmly as Slug slammed his fists into the barrier, each strike sending a shockwave through the chamber, but failing to make even a dent. Your strength is immense, Chiron admitted, but prisons are built for monsters greater than you. Slug's eyes widened with fury. There is no monster greater than me. He charged the barrier again, only for the rings to release a synchronized eruption of pressure that dropped him instantly. For a moment, Slug lay there, chest heaving, eyes dilated with primal rage. Then slowly, painfully, he pushed himself up on one elbow and stared at the warden. 2 years, he whispered, breath trembling with wrath. I will remember every second. Chiron turned his back. That is the point. As the chamber sealed entirely, Slug pressed his palm against the glowing barrier, feeling its pulse. Cold, unmoving, merciless. He lowered his voice to a venomous hiss. Gokhan, you think this cage saves you? It only delays me. His fingers tightened. Cooler, you stole my world. You will choke on that crime. His expression twisted into something darker than rage, something calculating. Turles, you interfered in my ascension. I will break your empire first. For the first time since arriving, Slug smiled. Not with triumph, but with the cold anticipation of a hunter waiting for the cage door to open. 2 years, he whispered again, almost reverently. Enough time to learn every weakness of this place. Enough time to prepare for my rebirth. Above him, the rings dimmed, plunging the chamber into harsh shadow. Chiron spoke through the intercom one final time. Your sentence begins now. Slug closed his eyes. Good. And as silence fell, only one thought remained burning in his mind, an oath that echoed louder than any roar. When I return, the galaxy will tremble.